Dr. Marcus Cole stared at the quantum fluctuation readings on his laboratory screen, fighting back exhaustion. The university's underfunded physics department wasn't exactly the career he'd dreamed of, but it was all he had left after his controversial theories about interdimensional communication got him laughed out of the prestigious research institutes. "Come on, show me something," he muttered, adjusting the settings on his homemade quantum receiver. The device, cobbled together from spare parts and maxed-out credit cards, hummed quietly in the corner of his basement lab. Most of his colleagues thought he was wasting his time trying to detect quantum signals from other dimensions, but Marcus knew he was onto something. The monitor flickered, displaying an unusual pattern he'd never seen before. His heart raced as he leaned closer, analyzing the quantum signature. This wasn't background radiation or random noise, it was structured, almost like a message. "Program running, final calibration," announced the lab's AI assistant, Aria. "Warning, unknown quantum resonance detected." Marcus's fingers flew across the keyboard, trying to isolate the signal. "Aria, can you decode this pattern?" "Attempting pattern analysis. Caution, signal strength increasing exponentially." The quantum receiver's hum grew louder, and the fluorescent lights overhead began to flicker. Papers scattered across his desk as an invisible force filled the room. Marcus should have been terrified, but all he felt was excitement. After 15 years of research, he was finally proving his theories correct. "Dr. Cole," Aria's voice took on an urgent tone, "I strongly advise shutting down now." A brilliant purple light erupted from the quantum receiver, enveloping Marcus in its glow. The world around him stretched and twisted, reality itself seeming to fold like origami. When his vision cleared, he found himself standing in what appeared to be a massive crystalline amphitheater, surrounded by beings that defied description. "Welcome, fortunate contestant." A melodious voice echoed through the space. A holographic figure materialized before him, tall, elegant, and decidedly alien. "I am Nexus, your host for the grand selection." Marcus gaped at his surroundings, his scientific mind racing to process what he was seeing. The what? The grand selection. The most prestigious matching ceremony in the 7 star systems. Nexus's form shimmed with what might have been amusement. "Your quantum experiments caught our attention. Quite impressive for a civilization at your development stage." "My experiments?" Marcus's voice cracked. "They actually worked." "Indeed. Though perhaps not quite as you intended. You see, you've been chosen as Earth's representative in the competition for Princess Lyra's hand in marriage." Marcus blinked. "I'm sorry, did you say marriage?" "Of course. The princess requires a mate who can think beyond conventional boundaries. Your quantum research proves you have potential." Nexus gestured to the arena's upper levels, where a figure watched from behind an iridescent force field. Even at this distance, Marcus could make out violet skin and eyes that seemed to contain galaxies. "But I didn't sign up for this," Marcus protested. "I was trying to prove the existence of quantum communication between dimensions. And you succeeded. Though your paper on interdimensional quantum entanglement had a few minor errors." Nexus produced a holographic copy of Marcus's rejected research. "The quantum foam actually propagates through 11 dimensions, not just the 5 you proposed." Before Marcus could process this critique of his life's work, 3 more beings materialized in the arena. One appeared to be made of living crystal, another seemed to be a sentient cloud of plasma, and the third looked like an advanced AI in humanoid form. "Meet your competition," Nexus announced cheerfully. "Ambassador Crystallos of the Silicon Collective, Plasma Lord Xerxes of the Energy Dominion, and Quantum Intelligence Unit 09. Marcus looked down at his coffee-stained lab coat and worn sneakers, then at his impossibly advanced competitors. "I don't suppose I could forfeit?" "Oh, no," Nexus's voice turned serious. "The quantum entanglement is irreversible. You must either win the competition or face molecular dispersal across all 11 dimensions." In the royal box above, Princess Lyra leaned forward, her cosmic eyes fixed on Marcus with unexpected intensity. For a moment, he could have sworn she winked at him. Well, Marcus sighed, his scientific curiosity warring with his sense of self-preservation. At least I finally proved interdimensional communication is possible. Even if this isn't quite how I planned to publish my findings. The arena erupted in what might have been alien laughter, and Marcus had a feeling his life was about to become a lot more interesting than reviewing rejected grant proposals. The first challenge of the grand selection began before Marcus had time to fully process his situation. The crystalline arena transformed, its surfaces rippling like liquid glass before reshaping into what appeared to be an enormous quantum computer laboratory. Welcome to the trial of innovation. Nexus announced, their holographic form expanding to address the stadium filled with alien spectators. Contestants must solve a series of quantum encryption puzzles while avoiding molecular destabilization. Simple, yes. About as simple as teaching quantum mechanics to a goldfish, Marcus muttered, studying the holographic interface that materialized before him. The symbols were alien, but the underlying mathematical principles felt familiar. Ambassador Crystallos moved with perfect precision, their crystalline form interfacing directly with the quantum systems. Plasma Lord Xerxes shifted through multiple energy states, processing information at light speed. The AI-09 had already begun calculating probabilities at a rate that made Marcus's head spin. But Marcus noticed something odd. The quantum patterns looked remarkably similar to the anomalies he detected in his lab. Years of studying supposedly impossible signals had prepared him for this moment, even if he hadn't known it. Your time begins now. Nexus declared. The air crackled with energy as force fields separated the contestants. Marcus's fingers moved across the holographic controls, his mind racing. The other contestants were approaching this like a brute force computational problem. But quantum mechanics wasn't just about processing power, it was about understanding the fundamental weirdness of reality. Arya, he whispered, then remembered his AI assistant was back on Earth. He was on his own. The first puzzle involved quantum entanglement pathways. While his competitors tried to calculate every possible combination, Marcus remembered a quirk he discovered in his own research. Quantum particles didn't always follow logical paths, sometimes they took the route that should have been impossible. He input a solution that looked wrong on paper but felt right in his gut. The interface glowed green. One down. In the royal box, Princess Lyra leaned forward, her cosmic eyes narrowing with interest. The jewelry around her neck pulsed with what might have been approval. The second puzzle dealt with quantum superposition. 09 was already showing signs of computational strain, smoke rising from its neural processors. Crystallos's perfect structure had developed tiny fractures from the processing load. Xerxes's plasma form was fluctuating unstably. Marcus closed his eyes, remembering the late nights in his lab when the equations seemed to mock him. But those failures had taught him something valuable. Sometimes the best solution was to stop trying to force the universe to make sense. He input a sequence that violated 3 laws of physics but matched the chaotic patterns he'd observed in his own quantum receiver. The puzzle solved itself instantly. Impossible. Crystallos's voice rang out like breaking glass. The human is cheating. Not cheating, Marcus replied, growing more confident. Just accepting that the universe doesn't always follow our rules. The final puzzle was the hardest, a quantum maze that seemed to change every time you looked at it. 09's processors finally overloaded, the AI freezing in place. Crystallos shattered under the computational strain. Xerxes dispersed into random energy patterns, unable to maintain coherent form. Marcus stared at the maze, remembering something he'd written in his rejected paper: quantum particles don't solve the maze, they rewrite it. Instead of trying to solve the puzzle, he adjusted the quantum field itself, changing the parameters of the problem. The maze didn't so much solve itself as cease to be a maze at all. The arena fell silent. Well, Nexus appeared, their holographic form flickering with what might have been shock. It seems we have a winner. Though I must say, Dr. Cole, your method was unorthodox. Story of my life, Marcus shrugged. My entire career has been about finding the impossible solutions that everyone else overlooked. A quiet laugh echoed through the arena. Princess Lyra had stood up, her cosmic eyes fixed on Marcus with unmistakable interest now. The jewelry around her neck was pulsing rapidly, as if trying to constrain something. Fascinating, she said, her voice carrying clearly despite the distance. You didn't try to master the quantum realm, you worked with it. Like a dance partner rather than a conqueror. I learned the hard way that the universe doesn't like to be conquered, Marcus replied. It prefers to be understood. The next challenge begins in 1 hour. Nexus announced, but Marcus barely heard them. He was too busy noticing how the princess's jewelry seemed to be fighting against her every movement, like elegant chains disguised as ornaments. Something else was going on here, beyond this elaborate competition. And Marcus had a feeling his quantum receiver hadn't accidentally picked up this signal, he'd been chosen for a reason. The question was, by whom? As the arena reformed itself, he caught a glimpse of complex equations hidden in the crystalline patterns. They looked like a message, encoded in the very structure of this place. Perhaps his next challenge wouldn't just be about winning the competition, but understanding what was really happening in this impossible corner of the universe. Marcus found himself in what appeared to be a luxurious preparation chamber, though everything from the self-adjusting gravity to the walls that shifted colors with his mood screamed advanced alien technology. He was trying to decode the strange symbols floating in the air when a familiar holographic form materialized. Quite the performance out there, Nexus said, their form shifting through various geometric patterns. You've caused quite a stir. The betting pools across 7 galaxies are in chaos. Glad I could disrupt the interstellar economy, Marcus replied dryly, still studying the symbols. They reminded him of the quantum fluctuations he'd recorded in his lab, but more structured, almost like a warning. Before he could pursue that thought, the air shimmered and Princess Lyra herself appeared in the chamber. Up close, her presence was even more striking. Her violet skin seemed to contain swirling nebulae, and her eyes held the depth of space itself. But it was the complex network of jewelry around her neck and wrists that caught Marcus's scientific attention. The pieces weren't decorative, they were technological constraints. Leave us, Lyra commanded. Nexus bowed and vanished, though Marcus suspected they were still watching. Your quantum solution was elegant, Lyra said without preamble. You saw beyond the obvious path. Like seeing beyond the obvious purpose of this competition. Marcus gestured to her restraining jewelry. Those aren't ornaments. They're quantum dampeners, aren't they? A smile flickered across her cosmic features. Very observant. Most see what they expect to see, a pampered princess in expensive jewelry. You see the equations hidden in plain sight. The same equations that were encoded in the signal that brought me here. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. This isn't really about marriage, is it? What makes you think that? Because my quantum receiver wasn't powerful enough to detect signals from across the galaxy. Someone wanted me to find that signal. Someone who needed a human who could understand quantum mechanics but wasn't bound by conventional thinking. Lyra's jewelry pulsed with warning lights, but she ignored them. The Galactic Council claims to maintain order through strict control of quantum technology. They fear what might happen if lesser species gain true understanding of quantum mechanics. Like humans. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Like anyone who might challenge their power. Lyra's voice turned bitter. They use these dampeners to control those of us born with natural quantum abilities. The marriage competition is just a show, a way to maintain the illusion of diplomatic relations while ensuring no real power changes hands. The pieces clicked into place in Marcus's mind. You needed someone from outside the system. Someone whose approach to quantum mechanics wasn't constrained by their rules. The Council's greatest fear is quantum enlightenment spreading beyond their control. They never considered that a species they deemed primitive might develop quantum understanding naturally, through simple curiosity and observation. A distant alarm sounded. Lyra's jewelry brightened in warning. "The next challenge begins soon," she said quickly. "But you need to understand, winning this competition isn't the real goal. The Council's quantum network has a flaw, one they don't even know exists. Your unique perspective might be the key to exploiting it. And freeing you from those restraints?" Marcus guessed. "Freeing everyone from the Council's quantum monopoly." Lyra's eyes blazed with stellar fire. "Your failed experiments on Earth came closer to true quantum understanding than centuries of Council-approved research. Because you weren't trying to control quantum mechanics, you were trying to communicate with it." The alarm grew louder. Lyra's jewelry was now painfully bright. "They're calling me back," she said. "In the next challenge, look for the pattern within the pattern. The Council sees quantum mechanics as a tool. You see it as a language. That's why." She vanished mid-sentence as her dampeners activated. Marcus stood alone in the chamber, his mind racing. He'd spent his career being ridiculed for treating quantum mechanics as a form of communication rather than just a mathematical model. Now it seemed that very approach might be the key to something much bigger than a simple marriage competition. The chamber walls shifted color, signaling it was time for the next challenge. As Marcus prepared himself, he noticed his reflection in the crystalline surface. His lab coat was gone, replaced by what appeared to be a suit made of living metal that shifted and flowed with his movements. But more interesting were the quantum equations now visible in the air around him, like fragments of a universal language he was just beginning to understand. "Time for the next round." Nexus's voice boomed through the chamber. "I hope you're ready for the labyrinth of quantum paradox." Marcus smiled. Ready or not, he was about to take part in the greatest quantum experiment of his life, one that might reshape the very fabric of galactic society. As he stepped into the arena, he could feel thousands of alien eyes upon him. But the only gaze that mattered was the one from the royal box, where a princess with galaxies in her eyes watched with carefully restrained hope. Whatever came next, Marcus knew one thing for certain: his days of rejected research papers were definitely behind him. The labyrinth of quantum paradox lived up to its name. Marcus stood at its entrance, watching as the crystalline walls shifted and phased through multiple quantum states simultaneously. Unlike traditional mazes, this one existed in several dimensions at once, a physical manifestation of Schrödinger's thought experiments. "The rules are simple," Nexus announced to the packed arena. "Reach the center of the labyrinth where Princess Lyra awaits. But beware, every path you don't take becomes real in another quantum reality. Choose wrongly, and you might find yourself trapped between dimensions." Members of the Galactic Council had appeared in their private observation box, their forms obscured by quantum field distortion. Marcus could feel their cold attention focusing on him, the primitive human who had survived far longer than their calculations had predicted. "Begin," Nexus commanded. Marcus stepped into the labyrinth, his mind racing. The living metal suit he wore responded to his movements, providing quantum state readings through direct neural interface. Each intersection presented multiple paths, all existing simultaneously until observed. It was quantum mechanics on a macro scale, beautiful, terrifying, and impossible by every law of physics he'd learned on Earth. But he wasn't thinking like a Earth physicist anymore. "The pattern within the pattern," he muttered, remembering Lyra's words. The equations floating in the air weren't just decorative, they were a message, a quantum communication network hidden in plain sight. A path to his left solidified, then shattered into probability waves. A route ahead split into 11 dimensions simultaneously. But Marcus wasn't looking at the paths themselves, he was studying the quantum fluctuations between them. In his lab on Earth, he'd theorized that quantum particles could communicate across space and time. His colleagues had laughed, but he'd seen patterns in the noise, like a vast conversation happening just beyond human perception. Now he was seeing those same patterns writ large across the fabric of spacetime itself. The Council wasn't just controlling quantum technology, they were suppressing a fundamental property of the universe. Quantum mechanics wasn't just mathematics, it was a language, and every particle in existence was part of the conversation. Marcus reached out, not with his hands but with his understanding, feeling the quantum field respond. The labyrinth wasn't meant to be solved, it was meant to be talked to. In the royal box, Lyra's quantum dampeners flared with warning lights as she sensed what he was attempting. The council members leaned forward, their distortion fields rippling with concern. Impossible, one of them declared, their voice echoing through quantum space. The human is accessing restricted quantum channels. But Marcus wasn't accessing anything, he was finally, truly listening. The paths through the labyrinth weren't random. They were expressions of quantum will, like words formed from probability in wave functions. He began to move, not choosing paths but flowing with the quantum current. The labyrinth responded, its walls shifting not to block but to guide. He wasn't fighting against quantum uncertainty, he was embracing it, becoming part of the universe's ongoing dialogue. The council members were shouting now, their carefully maintained quantum control starting to slip. Across the arena, quantum dampeners began to flicker and fail as the suppressed quantum communication network awakened. The system is destabilizing. Nexus announced, their holographic form splitting into countless probability shadows. Quantum containment protocols failing. Marcus could feel it happening, a cascade of quantum awakening spreading through the arena, the station, and out into space. Every quantum-enabled device, every suppressed particle, every contained quantum field was joining the conversation. He reached the center of the labyrinth where Lyra waited, her dampeners shorting out as the quantum revolution spread. Their eyes met across the quantum storm, scientist and princess, both understanding the magnitude of what was happening. The quantum network, she breathed, her natural abilities flowing freely for the first time in years. It's not just communicating, it's democratizing itself. The Council's private box erupted in chaos as their quantum control systems failed. The distortion fields collapsed, revealing their true forms, beings of pure energy who had long ago abandoned physical form for quantum existence. "What have you done?" they demanded as their carefully controlled quantum network transformed into an open channel of universal communication. Marcus smiled, feeling the quantum field dance around him like a living thing. "I didn't do anything," he said. "I just helped the universe remember how to talk to itself." The labyrinth walls dissolved as reality itself seemed to shift, the boundaries between quantum and classical physics blurring. The revolution wasn't being fought with weapons but with understanding, as the suppressed quantum nature of the universe reasserted itself. And in the center of it all stood a human scientist and an alien princess, watching as their galaxies learned to speak the same quantum language for the first time in centuries. In the days following what historians would later call the quantum liberation, the grand arena had transformed into a hub of interstellar diplomacy. The crystalline walls now pulsed with freely flowing quantum information, countless species learning to communicate in ways the Council had forbidden for millennia. Marcus stood at a viewport, watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. Each vessel carried representatives eager to participate in the new quantum democracy. His reflection in the transparent crystal showed a changed man, still wearing his quantum-responsive suit, but now standing with the confidence of someone who had found his place in the universe. "Your quantum receiver back on Earth," Lyra's voice came from behind him. It wasn't just detecting signals, was it? It was participating in the quantum conversation all along. Marcus turned to face her. Without the dampeners, Lyra's natural quantum abilities made her presence feel like standing next to a star, brilliant, powerful, but no longer restrained. "I think Earth itself was trying to join the conversation. We humans just needed to learn how to listen. And now everyone's listening." She gestured to the gathering below, where beings of all forms, energy, matter, and states in between, were learning to communicate through the quantum field. The former council members, stripped of their control but not their knowledge, were reluctantly teaching others how to access the quantum network safely. Nexus materialized nearby, their holographic form now stable and clear. The marriage competition is technically still undecided, they noted with what might have been amusement. Though I suspect its original purpose is somewhat obsolete. The competition was never about marriage, Marcus said, watching a group of silicon-based beings teach quantum communication techniques to a collective of plasma entities. It was about finding someone who could see beyond artificial boundaries, in physics, in society, in everything. Perhaps, Lyra smiled, her cosmic eyes twinkling, but that doesn't mean the idea of marriage should be completely dismissed. Marcus looked at her in surprise. Even though it's not politically necessary anymore. Quantum mechanics has taught us that the most interesting possibilities occur when different systems interact freely, she said, moving closer. And I find your perspective on universal communication fascinating. Are you proposing to me using quantum physics metaphors? Marcus asked, fighting back a grin. Is it working? Before he could respond, a commotion erupted below. A new ship had arrived, smaller than the others, bearing the unmistakable marks of human construction. Marcus recognized the logo of his university. Your colleagues, Lyra explained. Once the quantum network opened, Earth's scientific community started receiving clear signals. They followed them here. Dr. Marcus Cole, the laughingstock of quantum physics, is about to become Earth's first official contact with the galactic community. Marcus watched as a group of wide-eyed human scientists was led into the arena, their expressions a mixture of awe and vindication. Among them, he spotted several who had rejected his papers. They looked considerably less skeptical now. Ready to help bridge our worlds? Lyra asked, offering her hand. Where their skin touched, quantum possibilities danced. As long as you're okay with a partner who learned quantum mechanics through trial and error in a basement lab, Marcus replied, taking her hand. My dear Marcus, she laughed, the sound rippling through quantum space like music, that's precisely why you're perfect. You never let anyone tell you how quantum mechanics should work, you just opened your mind and let the universe teach you. Together, they descended to meet the Earth delegation. Above them, the crystalline walls of the arena pulsed with quantum conversations spanning galaxies. Somewhere in a basement lab on Earth, a humble quantum receiver continued to blink, now part of a vast network of universal communication. The marriage competition that had started as a facade had evolved into something far more meaningful, a union not just of two beings, but of different ways of seeing the universe. And as Marcus prepared to help humanity join the galactic quantum community, he couldn't help but appreciate the irony. His greatest scientific achievement had come not from trying to prove others wrong, but from learning to listen to the quantum whispers that had been there all along. By the way, he said to Lyra as they approached the Earth scientists, I never did get that pizza I was originally promised when this all started. Pizza? She asked, cosmic eyes brightening with curiosity. Is that another form of quantum communication? No, Marcus laughed, but I have a feeling you're going to love it. It's all about combining different elements to create something greater than the sum of its parts. Like us? Exactly like us. And as they stepped forward to greet Earth's representatives, the quantum field around them hummed with possibilities, of love, of discovery, and of a future where the boundaries between species, sciences, and stars had finally begun to fade.